6:41, good morning. Let's have a look at the papers today. And of course, the crisis in Israel is dominating the front pages.
Yes, The Observer looks at Israel's warning to those fleeing Gaza. The next stage is coming, they say.
Israel poised for Gaza invasion, says the Sunday Times.
And The Telegraph also leads with Israel's ground operation coming up in Gaza.
Sunday Mirror, escape to hell, as it features the powerful image of a Palestinian man carrying an injured child.
While the Sunday Express highlights the Prime Minister's words, "We stand by Israel, always."
Well, let's go through some of the headlines this morning with the Deputy Editor of Spiked, Fraser Myers, author and broadcaster Nikki Hodgson. Good to see you both this morning. I don't know how to phrase this, but I'm struck by the front pages that they seem... that they're not... You couldn't in any way say they are anti-Israeli, but the fact that there is so much focus on the Palestinian side of this, does that flavour things in a way? Because it's so hugely difficult, isn't it, when you look at the the horrific attacks on Israel, but you also look at what is happening in Gaza and the concern for civilians there, and it doesn't seem overly balanced to me.
I mean, I suppose I was thinking about this as well, actually. I suppose at the beginning of the week, we were commenting on immediately what had happened in Israel. And I think the focus really is now on what will happen in Gaza. So I guess that's why it's been covered that way. I mean, it's very difficult. It's a very difficult job for a newspaper editor to know at what point you've had too much coverage of one side and maybe you look biased. I personally don't feel it is at that point yet. I think it's just this very real humanitarian disaster that may or may not happen.
It's funny because I was struck the other way. I thought the front pages were beginning to reflect both sides a little bit more.
Really?
Yeah.
They tried to balance. They're picking... If they're picking a picture of somebody in Gaza who's been terribly injured, they're also putting alongside it a story from the Israeli point of view. I think they are struggling, you're right, with how they're trying to balance things.
Yeah, I think that's right. I suppose it is sort of directly following the story. I mean, it's tragic that, you know, there is a danger that we will forget quite quickly the horrors that happened just this time last week. But the focus is naturally on the Palestinian side at the moment, given Israel is preparing this, you know, all-out ground, air and sea invasion. So it remains to be seen what will happen there. People are obviously, you know, worried about the casualties, understandably, as in any... You know,
well, you've been looking at US Today, where they've been talking about, and I've seen a lot more of this, about the amazing lifeline that WhatsApp is beginning to provide.
Yeah, it's unusual because normally we hear stories about how awful social media is and what a malign force it is on the world and spreading misinformation, blah, blah, blah. But here, you know, we see how essential it has become, particularly WhatsApp, not only for sharing information, but for, you know, families knowing whether their sons and daughters are alive, knowing their location. Lots of people in the US, in the UK, they will have relatives either on the Israeli side or in Gaza, and they, you know, now they can sort of keep up to date with what's going on. And it seems as if there's also been a case where WhatsApp has been absolutely vital in saving lives. There was this mothers' WhatsApp group in Be'eri in the kibbutz that was attacked near the Gaza border on Saturday. And people were sharing vital information, like how do you lock a room properly in an emergency.
Yes, they've all got safe rooms. They were all talking about rushing to safe rooms, but then immediately contacting each other and saying, how do I lock the door of my safe room?
How do I get it to work? Yeah. And also giving, you know, real-time updates of, I've heard the gunman here, you know, run this way. And potentially, you know, many tens of people's lives will have been saved, you know.
And this is just an ordinary WhatsApp group shared by mums in the kibbutz.
This is just ordinary mums giving, you know, sharing information in a way that, yeah, potentially will have saved lots of lives. I mean, obviously, we know that community was visited with absolute tragedy. I think around 1 in 10 people who lived there were killed, you know, literal decimation, but any, you know, life saved is something to be grateful for.
Well, yeah, indeed. Look, it is 6:45. If you've just joined us, let's remind you of the main news this morning. Thousands of Palestinian civilians in Gaza are continuing to flee to the southern half of the Strip after Israel's order for more than 1 million to evacuate, as Israel announces it's gearing up for a substantial ground operation.
And the UN Relief Agency says Gaza is being pushed into an abyss, calling the situation the worst they've ever seen.
And thousands have descended on London for a huge pro-Palestinian rally, including former Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn. But rising community tensions and reports of hate crime, well, opinion really is divided on how police should deal with the protests. Nikki and Fraser still here. Nikki, let's have a look at the Mail on Sunday, should we? Civil servants are backing Extinction Rebellion, according to this man who threw glitter over Keir Starmer.
Yeah, so the guy in question, he's called Yaz Asmawi, I think it is. You would have seen at the conference, he was the guy that interrupted Keir Starmer's speech and glittered him, and Labour have now taken opportunity to use that as some marketing. It's kind of been quite positive for them, actually. I actually don't think this is news, because I think we've known about this for quite a while, but he's making the distinction between Extinction Rebellion and the Just Stop Oil protesters. And he's saying whereas the Just Stop Oil protesters haven't got the support of civil servants and kind of senior figures in government and people that work around that industry, Extinction Rebellion have, and that perhaps because they've been a little bit more restrained in their efforts, they have allowed the civil servants who are kind of really pro-climate stuff to get on board with them. He hasn't named names, you know, so he's sort of... I mean, it's kind of a bit of... I don't know, maybe it's a bit of an exaggeration about how much support there is. Somebody saying good work or, you know, somebody directly working with the group is quite different, isn't it? So, yeah I think we'll have to wait and see what actually happens with that.
No, fair enough. It's an odd one.
I find it quite alarming, though. I mean, if it is the case that there is large support for Extinction Rebellion, because we should remind ourselves.
It's not so long ago they were gluing themselves to roads. Yeah,
and you know, I think because they no longer carry out these tactics, people have assumed that this is you know, the sort of sensible side of the green movement. But we should remind ourselves what their goals are. They want carbon neutrality by 2025. That's in 2 years' time. So if civil servants genuinely think that that's possible or desirable, I'd be interested to know, you know, which hospitals are they planning to close down, how many flights are they planning to ground, how many old ladies' boilers do they want to turn off?
Yeah.
I mean, it is a deranged proposal, and it's quite alarming that, you know, supposedly sensible people aren't running away a mile away from this.
This will intrigue you too, because I know